Welcome back to One Conversation, the podcast where we believe one conversation can change a life. Today we have a really exciting guest on our show. This conversation may sound a little different from our usual topics, but it'll definitely be one for the books. So, to all our listeners, stay tuned for this awesome conversation.
Yeah, and I can say I'm personally really excited about this one. So, the guest we have today, I'm honored to call a friend of mine. He's an incredible MMA athlete with an even more incredible story and journey of overcoming trauma and loss. And so that's why we really wanted to bring him in today. Again, although this may sound a little bit different than our typical episodes, he definitely has a lot to share. And so let's go ahead and introduce our guest today, Chris Cocores.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we are really excited. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we know you're busy, so thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about this one.
Absolutely. Excited to get started.
Okay, so we usually start when we have a guest speaker. We usually start with some fun questions before we dive into what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Today, we're going to keep it just to one question, so we have enough time to discuss your story. So the question for today is, if you could have lunch with anyone throughout time, past, present, fictional, non-fictional, who would it be and why?
For me, I would definitely say my mother.
Mm.
She passed away when I was 19. Um, yeah, I just think that that's the easiest answer for sure because there's a lot of things that she's missed out on in my life since. Um, she passed away towards the beginning of my life when I was just getting started with a lot of things. Um, So yeah, I mean that's actually a conversation I've had with myself a lot. That if I ever had the
Yeah.
chance, or maybe I had the opportunity to have a conversation with her, what that would look like, and she was really meaningful to me. So I would definitely pick her.
That's a great answer. And I feel like
Mhm.
everyone that we've asked that question to, that's kind of our question we ask to everyone. All of our guests get that same one question. And a lot of the time, yeah, it's someone that, our guests have lost, but we've all spoke to, because I've backed that up so many times, like losing my dad at a young age. And it's like as many people might want to say like, oh, Beyonce or like the Pope, because I get to sit down and
Yeah,
have lunch. It's like, yeah, those people in your life that were the most meaningful, especially if you did go through that loss, right? It's
Yeah.
like, of course, right? Of course, that's someone you'd probably want to spend that time with. And
yeah,
Chris, I just want to say
yeah,
also, just thank you so much for just opening up with vulnerability. I know a lot of the story is going to be from a place of vulnerability, maybe triggering. So you let us know today if there's anything, maybe that's too much to discuss, or a question that we have for you that you're really not willing to get into. Like, you're going to dictate this conversation for us today, but we just appreciate in advance your vulnerability, and just really diving into this today.
yeah. It's my pleasure. I think transparency is key, especially in situations like mine, and that's what I've been pushing for these last couple years. And I'm open to be honest, and whatever you guys need, whatever your questions are, I got the answers. So.
And we appreciate that. And I know our listeners will too, because I mean, this is really just such an incredible, heart wrenching, but just incredible story of survival, of recovery. And so, personally, I'm just really excited, for our listeners to hear about this, but also just a lot of your insight, because I think the situations that you've been through have provided you so much wisdom, and just really inspiring to hear, kind of what has occurred. And so, we're going to dive in. I'm going to get right into our first question for you. So, take us back in time a little bit. So, before December of 2017, can you give our listeners some insight? What were you working towards before that December, before that time?
Before December 17, so I started training for MMA when I was like 16, 17, and I was kind of using it as a vice of getting out of trouble and just staying focused when I was a kid. Um, I didn't really have the best surrounding at the time, so fighting for me was it was a positive outlet. Um, to cut the long story a little bit short, I fought through my 20s, and when I was 26, when the accident happened, I was basically peaking as an amateur fighter. I had won the WFC title, defended that twice, so I was towards the upper ranks of the amateur division in all of the Western region in California,
Wow.
um, which I did, of course, with the help of family and coaches and whatnot. But a lot of it, I did kind of by the wind of my own sail, like going to San Diego and sleeping on a friend's floor and like a dollar in a dream type of thing. So kind of built it from scratch, and that was a really cool experience. And yeah, was just killing it. I mean, so I had spent some time in San Diego, trying to make a life for myself. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't easy. I didn't have a lot of money going to San Diego when I moved there when I was 19. It was about a year after my mom passed away.
Mm,
Um, and and fighting MMA is not a it's not a well-paying sport as an amateur. So,
right.
uh, but it's also, you got to train hard. You got to put a lot of daily hours in. So I was going through that struggle for quite a while, and then um, I was supposed to come back to Tahoe, and I had just a situation kind of fall through on me. So I got this kind of like random job at Planet Fitness, and the girl who was training me ended up being Cecilia. I don't even know if you knew that, but that's how we met. And so, yeah, the rest is history. We hit it off. We spent 2.5 years together. She really motivated me to kind of take a different look at fighting, and take it more serious. And in those 2 years is when I fought for all my world titles, when I really started excelling the most. And I mean, when we left San Diego to go up to Tahoe, the weekend of the crash, I don't know, it was right after It was Christmas, yeah, Christmas week, and I mean, we had a nice apartment in San Diego overlooking the city. That we had only been there for 6 months. She was going to school to be an engineer. She was only 21 at the time, 22.
Wow.
Um, I had a great job, peak of my career, came home to see family, tell them about my life that I had built. And, but yeah, we came to Tahoe that weekend just to see family and do some training. I had a huge fight. It was my last, I left this out. It was my last amateur fight about 2 months after that. Maybe it was like a month. And we came up here to do some training, to see family, to meet my family. So then we just, on our way back home, everything changed.
Wow. And I mean, what an incredible time that you were in, right? You'd already gone through so much in your life. And thank you for sharing that, you lost your mom and that really compelled you, right? And it was like you were in such a good place, right? At that point, you were really like working towards your goals and just, you kind of had the world at your fingertips at that point,
For
right? And
sure.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's exactly what I was gonna say. The fact that there was a lot going on, a lot of positive stuff. So can you tell our listeners a little bit of what changed on December of 2017? Kind of walk us through what happened and just, give as much detail as you feel comfortable with giving.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I mean, my entire life did it. Like, I had lost literally everything, and I mean, I still had family at home. I was holding on to my body with my fingertips, but I lost my girlfriend. I lost my dog in the back seat of the car. Most of my most valuable belongings were with us in the car because we were in Tahoe for about 2 weeks, and I just brought a lot of really valuable stuff with me, and I just never got to go back to that life. Like I like I made a personal effort about a year and a half later to go back to our apartment, but it was just so I could find some closure. Because her dad went and cleared out our whole apartment, all of our stuff. Um, Obviously lost my job, broke my whole body, so I was laid up in the hospital for close to a month, and had to basically down to the basics in life, like learn how to brush my teeth, go to the bathroom, walk. Um, so it was a really, like, I just was stripped. My entire life was stripped. I felt like the only thing I really had left was fighting if I could get back to it, but even then it was like it was kind of a joke to assume that that was a possibility. So
Yeah. And I can't imagine going through an accident like that, right? And just really being in that place where you go from being such a proficient athlete, right? So strong, so capable, so resilient to, really having to relearn those things, right? After that crash. I just think it's really, I mean, it's especially incredible to see you now, right? But yeah, it's a really humbling thing to think about.
yeah, it was a it was a very humbling experience. It kind of gave me the chance to reel it back in and focus on the small things and the back to the basics. You know, I mean, it was a wild experience, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I had to learn how to use my legs. It was humiliating. You know, doctors were bathing me. They had to turn me on my side, and I was helpless. I couldn't move. So my spine was so unstable, and I got what they call seatbelt syndrome. So the seatbelt basically at a certain speed, it usually kills you. You know, they say above like
Wow.
80 or 70 miles an hour. Um, I don't really know the science. It still trips me out to this day because I'm like, you'd think that they would make something that would be more safe, but the seatbelt being as slim as it is, it just cuts, like your chest can take it, but it cuts into your intestine. And what happened to me is the exact worst case scenario where it goes into your stomach, it severs your intestine, and then it snaps your spine. So basically, it
Whoa.
goes through your whole lower stomach. And yeah, so you know, I had zero strength there, and yeah, it was a very humiliating experience.
Yeah. So thank you, Chris. And again, I just want to echo what Lisa said because she's a mind reader. I was just really, really impressed from the very beginning of this episode with how vulnerable you were being. And honestly, it feels like an honor to just really hear you speak about your story and just provide us with so much information on your life because I know this
Yeah.
is probably an intimate part of your life. And just for you to be able to share it with us and our listeners, we really, really appreciate you for that. And, you know, you're amazing. So thank you for being here. But I do have another question for you. How long
Sure.
did your recovery take, or for you to feel like you are getting some of that normalcy back in regards to fighting again?
In regards to like physical life or just specific,
Yeah, you can definitely touch up on the physical healing, as well as if you want to touch up on the emotional healing as well.
I mean, they were two separate tasks for me for sure.
Right.
The physical part of it, I just had an incredible team. Jameson Delalo, Barton Hospital over here, and their rehabilitation center. Um, I just really committed, and honestly, on the physical front, I'm still trying to figure it out because I've had a lot of people say like the reason that you were able to make it back and everything was because of a lot of mental strength. And I still haven't really been able to put a finger on that one because I agree, but I also just got up and just, you know, clocked in, like just showed up to PT and was proactive, took my vitamins, addressed the injuries individually. I mean, it just took a lot of work for sure. And then mentally, the process of recovering from something like that takes a long time. Um, it's something that I think that people who haven't been through it, maybe they don't really understand or respect as much as obviously ones who have. Because, like for me, crazy enough, the hardest time was after I got cleared to fight, after everything was over, and I had to like move back out on my own after like 2 years of living with family and being in the hospital and like going back to normal life just felt weird. And
Sure.
I was, you know, used to being in a constant state of survival, um, fighting for my life, fighting for my stability mentally, physically. And then when it was time to go back, like back into normal life, you know, working a normal job, I just, it was a weird time. And that's actually when I broke down the most, was when I had to do that. So it's an interesting process, and I'm sure everybody deals with it differently. But um, one of the biggest things for me, which I had learned from losing my mother, was I addressed a lot of the uh, the emotions and the pain early on. I've always been a very like, you know, take it on right now and let it hit me as hard as it can. That way I know that I can't get hit any harder after this. So now, when I was laying on the side of the road and I was basically dying, holding on to my life, I was asking the lady who was with me. She came and she put a blanket over me and was just kind of like helping me hold on. And I just kept asking her for confirmation, like, is my girlfriend dead? Is my girlfriend dead? Because I wanted to know. And you know, waking up in the hospital, I just kept asking all these questions because I just wanted to know answers. Um, and you know, I let my feelings spill out of me. I mean, it was hard, but there was nights in the hospital where I would grab a pillow and just scream into it. because I didn't want to disturb the people next to me or freak the nurses out. But I'm a big advocate of feeling your feelings. Um, I think it's really important to be transparent with your feelings, you know, with the world around you, and not be scared of it. So there's a lot to it, but those are definitely some key things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, and I just want to jump back a little bit because again, I have the honor of knowing Chris in real life. I mean, albeit now I've moved, so I'm not in Tahoe anymore. But yeah, I used to train at the same gym as Chris. I was doing kickboxing, and I will never forget the moment when you started coming back into the gym, and it was like you couldn't really even do a whole lot physically yet. But I remember
Hmm.
looking over, and I was like, oh my God, he is in here, and you were just so lightly, you had your gloves on, and you were just tapping the punching bag, you know. And I think that was
Hmm.
like all the movement you could really do at the time. And in my head, I had just never, like in real time, like heard a story like yours to begin with, but then seen someone, I mean, at that level, right, where it's like you know, should be home in bed, but instead you're here, you're on your feet, and even though your movement might be a fraction of what it used to be in terms of fighting, right, in MMA, it was like you
Yeah.
were just so devoted to it, right, and it was
Right.
something that was just so inspiring, really awe-inspiring for me. And so I just wanted to like highlight that moment because I remember that. I would distinctly
Yeah.
remember like, oh my God, he's back in the gym, and like just
Yeah.
this little movements. It was like anything you could do.
Little me too. I was brittle. I was skinny. I was definitely. I think
Yeah.
I was almost 30, 40 pounds less than I am now.
Yeah, and you might have still had like a brace on, like something, you know? It was just
Yeah. I had a metal brace. I ordered one off Amazon to keep my spine stable. PT doctors hated that, but yeah, I just wrapped it around my stomach. That way I could go move around and not break
yeah.
myself.
I will never ever forget that. Like I can still see it clear as day in my mind. Like
Yeah.
you coming in, you standing there. I was like, wow. Just being really blown away by that. And you also
Yeah.
kind of answered a little bit there, just kind of talking about, you know, feeling your feelings, which we love hearing that because in this podcast
Hmm.
we talk about that a lot. We're huge advocates as well for, you know, emotions are never right or wrong, they're just what they are, and really, you know,
Sure.
tapping into those and utilizing and respecting your own emotions. And so although you kind of, you know, spoke to that, we're just wondering what were some of you think the biggest or most essential components of your healing, and what did that really look like for you?
Um, it's a good question. I think the most essential components were reaching out to people when I needed. You know, I mean, I think obviously a lot of times in life we think we can handle things all on our own, but certain situations you just can't. I had a lot of good coaches, mentors, people around me that you know, I would just be resourceful if I needed advice. I mean, if I needed a pick me up, if I needed some physical advice. So I was just really resourceful, um, and I think that, man, it's honestly, guys, it's just it's something I'm still trying to figure out. I think it you know, I don't think that I went about the process of healing perfect. Um, you know, I made it to my goals, so that's a good thing. But I also, looking back, there's a few things that I maybe would have done a little bit different. There's a lot to losing the love of your life, and healing at a young age that a lot of people don't understand. Like my grandma, for instance, she lost my grandfather, her husband of 30 something years, um, right around that same time, actually. And
Wow.
she, you know, two different situations because her family and his family knew each other very well. She was a lot older, so now she's having to figure out how to live the remainder of her life alone. It was really tragic, unexpected. But for me, I knew that I had such a long life ahead of me, you know, and I knew that I had to learn how to love again, how to fight again, and I had to figure out a way to pick myself back up and get back to all these things because I had too much life to dwell and to be in pain for the rest of my life because of this situation. And so whatever it took, I just knew I needed to get through that. But it was hard because you know, I didn't find a book on it. There might be one out there, but you know, I don't think there's really enough writing or anything to tell you exactly how to go through a situation like this. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of questions for me, like, am I not giving enough attention to her family? Am I not putting enough attention on her? Um, am I putting too much attention on my past at times and not putting enough on my present and on my future?
Mm,
Um, and it was kind of a constant internal battle for me to figure that out. Am I being selfish? Am I not being selfish enough? Questions like that that I would kind of have to deal with daily and assess, where am I at? What have I done? And am I content? Like doing stuff like this is really helpful. And actually, to answer your question, one of the things that helped me the most, and again, this is just my journey. Everybody's is different.
sure.
Um, Something that I tell people a lot that kind of blows their mind is I didn't see one therapist since this whole thing happened or before. Um, Not because I'm against it, but because I just didn't ever feel the need to. Because as soon as the accident happened, when I was in the hospital, the only thing I managed to get back from the car was my phone. And her phone was shattered. They were both in the same spot in the car, but somehow mine managed to not have a scratch on it. So I took
Wow.
it as an opportunity to get on it and just start talking and just start connecting with people. And when I first got back home and I was in bed, I made a video, and the video went like semi-viral. And I ended up getting contacted from people from all over the U.S., outside of the U.S., that had lost boyfriends, girlfriends, kids were in the hospital for depression, suicide, all sorts of stuff. It was like overwhelming, just
Mm,
like tons of messages. Um, People that heard my story, and I just started talking to people, and it was the most therapeutic thing in the world. So that kind of set fire to like me going to San Diego and doing a talk with Epic Mastermind. It was like a motivational thing. Going to the high school and doing 7 talks there with their kids, podcasts, started to write a book, all sorts of things that just um, made me feel good, and it was like it almost just helped the healing process. And I tell people this a lot, but my goal, my lifelong goal now is to honor um, I'm just a product of my environment. The people here and the people that aren't here, and the things that these people are giving me as opportunities. So all I'm trying to do moving forward is just honor their lives. I want Cecilia and my mom to be able to speak through me. So whenever I perform in the cage or anything that I do in the light of their life and what they would want, and to make them proud and to just kind of represent, their life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I just want to say I am a true believer of the power of connection, right? And I really think that
mhm.
that's my biggest purpose in life, and I truly believe in that. So I'm just so glad that you had such a great support system around you. It sounds like that
Yeah.
made such a huge difference, and I think just the resiliency that I hear from what you've experienced and perseverance is just I'm so amazed and intrigued. So thank you again for being here.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, it's a complicated situation. So,
And I think it's important to also highlight that fact that, healing looks different for everybody. So the fact that you were able to find what worked for you, what made you feel better, like you said, you didn't go to a therapist, but you found a way where it helped you, and it's in a way it's kind of
yep,
helping others too with your story, just kind of
Yeah.
healing through. There's a saying, the wounded can also be the healers or something like that, where just
sure,
because
Yeah.
these traumatic experiences give you such insight on what it is and kind of more of a deeper understanding. Many people go through
absolutely.
this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think it's arrogant to assume that. I mean, for me at least, a lot of the time throughout this process, I would do talks, or I'd talk with people, and I'd say, this is how you get through it. But you don't know.
Right.
Everybody's wired differently, and everybody, So I had to learn how to be sensitive as well and understand each person, and just try and really help from a hands-on, hands-off. Like, where can I plug myself in? And then, yeah, for me, I've at least found that there's nothing more healing than helping people, um, and that's just what helped me get through it.
Yeah, and I have such an appreciation for that too. I think all of us working in this field, and JC and I have spoke a lot on this podcast. We're in a field talking about domestic violence, sexual violence, right? And these are things that we've all spoken about, kind of being survivors of, right? And that's really what drives a lot of our work, right? Like talking about teen
Sure,
dating violence is so important because we've been through that, right? And so I just think
absolutely.
it's awesome that I think you really just listen to yourself, because even though, like we could say like, yeah, therapy is a great thing, right? But I
Hmm.
love that you acknowledged, you just settled into your emotions, to your feelings. You allowed yourself to just find naturally and organically, right? Like what felt
Yeah.
best for you. And maybe that wasn't traditional therapy, but you found that therapy
Hmm.
through connecting with others, through using that experience, right? And that character building that came out of such an unfortunate circumstance to really empower and compel others. And so huge shout out to you for, yeah,
Thanks.
speaking your truth, living in your truth in that moment, and in such a difficult time, like navigating and figuring that out for yourself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think you just having the ability to be self-aware and really just dig in on those emotions on your own is so big. I definitely even have a hard time being vulnerable and just speaking to others and survivors, right? That have experienced either abuse or trauma. Sometimes that's a really difficult piece to be able to really address or identify how you're feeling or what's happening or how, you're being impacted by your experience is not the easiest thing. So that's so awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, bless your guys' hearts for trying and for doing what you do, because we need more people like you, But at the
Right
same
back at
time,
you.
I
Yeah.
think there's a special place for everyone, And I think we're all kind of, we just got to find what our place is. And for me, like, I think that on what you're saying, sometimes it's hard to tell somebody who's going through a major traumatic situation how to get through it unless you've been through it. And I took on that role of going, well, I've been through it, so I can help these people. And they'll trust me. There's a trust there because they understand it. And then,
Right.
as crazy it is, that's been my role for the last 3 years. Is everybody says the same thing. If you can get through what you have, then I can get through what I'm going through. And so, I think it's just all about finding purpose in your experiences.
Mm,
Um, there's always a silver lining, no matter how bad it gets. And a lot of people have proved that. A lot of people have gone through hell and back and managed to inspire the masses. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah. I love just that concept, right? Like there's always something and some beauty in what you've gone through, or some way to find strength in it. I think that's just, yeah, really empowering.
Yeah, and there's a lot of irony too. Near-death experiences change you. This one was a little bit different because I did have the loss to deal with as well, but um, there was a pretty there's a pretty crazy range of emotions that following like summer, because this happened basically January 1st, 2018. Is like when I woke up. Um, but that next summer, 2018, and that following year ended up being one of the best years of my life because when you go through a near-death experience, it's like you're being reborn. I had the most near-death experience you can have. I was, bleeding out, and so I had to physically hold on to my life. My body would start shutting down, and I'd have to tap into, whatever, anything I could find, the strength, my past, my cage fighting, um, training, place that I would spend in the gym where I'd feel tired and I'd have to push through these sessions, whatever it was, my body was fully shutting down. Like I would be like shaking super bad, and I was really warm, but it was really cold outside. And, this lady was like, hang on, hold on, like talking me through this. And, and I knew, because I've always been able to be calm under pressure, but I knew that I only had about 30 minutes left of my life. So in that moment, I was like, cares about anything else? Just reflect, just take some time to reflect, because that's what you do right before you die. Honestly, I know now, and I was like pretty disappointed because I just held back so much in life. Like, you know, I didn't say like I bit my tongue too much. I didn't take those spontaneous trips and steps in life that I wanted to because I was scared of this or that, and all of those thoughts filled my head and really made me upset. It's like, man, I don't want to die right now. So that next year and since then, my life has just been full transparency, like full steam ahead. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about what people think. I speak my truth. You like it, cool. You don't, cool. I love everybody. I think everybody's cool. everybody's beliefs is cool to me. I don't judge nobody. Try not to stay in a negative headspace too much, because I want to make sure that when I cross that bridge again, that I'm happy and thankful and content.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a really great experience that changed my life forever.
There's such incredible wisdom, I think, in that, right? And something that I am in no way capable of internalizing or understanding, feeling in that space and feeling that moment and doing that self reflection really in the heat of that, right? And really worried or wondering if that's the end of it, right? But I think I
Sure.
think for other people to hear that, right? I know that just had a huge impact on me, right? And I think I've heard you say that before, but it's something that continually has impact on me when I hear you say
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I feel like sometimes the best, smartest, most loving, caring people suffer the most. They
Yeah,
hold back. They spend too much time in their own head, in their own prison cell, and it's somewhere that I spent a lot of my life. Despite a lot of great experiences,
right.
but that changed it forever. Sometimes people hate it, but sorry for my language, but fuck them.
We'll
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
that.
It's like you're just going to be who you are. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. It's like after all that, we will take one swear on this episode. We're good. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think there's so much power in that, and right, and just recognizing your worth, recognizing, especially after you've been through kind of any trauma, right? Like the things in your life that you do appreciate, or the things in your
Hmm.
life that you're no longer maybe afraid to show, because like what's the point of holding this back if it benefits me, right? Or if it's just
sure.
my truth, or if it's just who I am. And so I think, again, just there's such incredible wisdom in that.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of like what I was saying after was just I was 26 and I was so far from who I've always wanted to be. Like my hero, my childhood hero, the guy that I always wanted to become, and whatever things along the way made me, you know, guilty or scared to be that person. And that's what I was most disappointed with is like, man, I'm not even dying with that person that I've always wanted to be. And
Mm,
so I set out on a journey after to become that person.
it's amazing.
Which I feel this kind of leads us to like another question. Do you have any insight, advice, or words of encouragement for anyone who has gone through any kind of loss or trauma?
I think it depends on the trauma.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of different forms of trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say one of the most important things is just uh, becoming aware of it, um, aware of what caused it,
Yeah.
um, aware of the fact that it's not your fault, um, and just putting it to rest. Trauma's a real thing, and it affects us all in different ways, and it comes from a lot of different places. Um, but yeah, I really just think understanding the source of that trauma, the fact that it wasn't your fault, the fact that that isn't you, that trauma is not you, and moving on and really just focusing on who you want to be and who you want to become. And I would say that for me is what's most valuable.
It made me like a little bit emotional just you hear or you saying that, right? Me hearing that, because I think especially for us in this field, we talk to a lot of survivors of
Yeah.
violence, right, and assault and abuse, and it's
Sure.
like that's the biggest crux of it is like really understanding that it was not your fault. But I love how you said that trauma isn't you, right? And I think there's now this beautiful underpinning that you brought up of like that trauma can like help rebuild me in a way or help push me to become a different version of myself, or a more
Sure.
maybe a
Yeah.
more aligned version of myself, or whatever that looks like. But that trauma isn't me. And I think for a lot of maybe victims and survivors out there listening today, I think understanding that whatever they went through, it could be part of their story, or it could be part of the journey they were on, but it's not them, right? And they don't have
Yeah.
to maybe identify as that, I think is oof, like such
Yeah.
such beautiful sentiment.
Say definitely does not need to define them. So I definitely agree with that, Lisa. And I just want to say that some of the most amazing people I have in my life or have ever met have experienced an extreme amount of trauma, right? And they're just
Yeah.
completely resilient, amazing, beautiful people. And, you know, they did not allow that to define them. And they just came out stronger on the other side. And I think sometimes the resiliency piece can really make us an amazing person, you know,
Sure.
and one that can really connect with others. And we won't always fully understand the situation because we may not have experienced it, but it will really allow us to kind of have an understanding of that person, who they are, right?
Hmm. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I got a soft place in my heart for damaged people, especially ones that have taken the initiative to repair themselves, whether it's domestic violence or or bad childhood or stuff that happened with your parents or loss. We're a special breed. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we had an episode not long ago, and we had one of our therapists, or used to be therapists, on the show because she's since started a private practice. But she shared a really beautiful mantra with us, and it was, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need." And it's like, I think you basically said all of those things today without knowing that mantra, right? Or like reading that out. But really, really spoke to that, right? And I think it's important to just kind of
awesome.
remind our listeners of that, right? That like, no matter what that suffering looks like or that trauma, we're all going to go through suffering,
Sure.
right? Whatever that looks like in our life, whatever scale that could be for them. But just, again, you've just really spoke so beautifully to that, right? Like you giving
Thanks.
yourself that kindness and that compassion in this whole journey.
I appreciate that. And yes, I mean, something else that I learned too on that is just, you know, it's hard. So I had this like idea after the accident, and it's funny because preparing for this podcast last night, I was doing some research on your guys' cast, and somehow I fell across one that I started making back when, and I honestly slept a couple hours. If you guys can't tell, I'm a little tired because I got caught up all night listening to these videos that I haven't heard of myself right after the accident.
Oh, wow.
Total mind trip. Probably not the best way to go into this, but it was nice to reconnect a little bit, like hearing my own voice and my own ideas. I ended up deleting a bunch of them because I I didn't necessarily agree with, I guess, how they were structured and some things that I maybe left out. But one of the major key things that I learned and that I spoke about at this talk that I did down in San Diego for Epic Mastermind, it's this big speech in front of a bunch of people, was preparation and like preparing for these different kinds of tragic events in our life, whatever they are, injuries, health problems, loss, sort of the inevitables, but what we can do to prepare for those to be, um, I guess, just more ready.
Hmm.
Um, like catering to our health more. I mean, one of the reasons that my mom got sick was because she was really unhealthy. She was taking way too much medication. She was on heavy pain medication for a long time, and as these things happen in my life, I mean, even Cecilia, bless her heart, she was a very aggressive driver, and it scared me for years. She had actually totaled a car 6 months prior to the crash we got into. And so I just felt like I was almost angry after, I was like, man, these things could have been prevented. And these were
Right.
people that I loved. And, they almost took themselves from my life, not to be selfish, but mine, her father, everybody. And so I just started taking it upon myself to how can I be more proactive to make sure that you know, I'm just conducting myself a little bit more consciously and just,
Yeah.
you know, um, so that's something else that I feel like helped me a lot. Just realizing that we do got a lot of control over our lives and our minds, and our decisions, our actions. One of the major things that helped me that I learned from losing my mother, because for me, the loss of my mom was the first major learning experience in life for me that hit me so hard that I learned a lot of things that helped me get through the next one. But something that I had explained to a lot of people after that was just that when I met Cecilia, I knew what it felt. Because people that lose people really close to them, they understand what that feeling is like. So I feel like when you meet somebody new, or even just after after this crash happened, I started calling friends that I had had falling outs with, um, mending these relationships because, when I had met Cecilia, I just treated the relationship like this could unfortunately not last forever, So I'm not obviously going to expect anything bad to happen, but I'm going to treat every day like this person is so special to me, and I cherish everything about them. We always had this thing where we'd never go to bed upset with each other. We would always make sure we addressed everything before bed. Little things that I would do that just have stuck with me and made me feel like I impacted her life. Like I would give her and my dog a kiss on the forehead every single night before bed, like routine. Um, Helping her find her glasses every morning. She had really bad eyes, um, stuff like that. And then just not spending a lot of time trying to be right, you know, or trying to fight her uh, what she needs in life, and
Yeah.
um, things that after it happened, I just, despite a major loss that hurt, it stung bad, I felt content with the impact that I made on her life. And so, that right there, if I could take anything from that accident, from that experience, it was that. It was every single person that I come across with, I just want to make sure that um, I leave them better than I found them, or at least try, you know?
And like appreciating those moments, right? Just those little moments and how you can be
Yeah,
present with
absolutely.
that person at the time, right? Even if it's just finding their glasses or just those little routines that you do together and like
Yeah, the little
recognizing,
stuff for sure.
yeah, just recognizing the value in even like small moments with people, right? And really feeling that, I think is, it's like a
Hmm.
heartbreaking but also like heartwarming. There's like a juxtaposition there, like it's heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time, right? To really like internalize that, right? And really think that
Yeah,
way, that it's important to really like place that value in yourself, right? Take that time and do the things that you need to do, and like working on that self-care, whatever that looks like, right? To have those kind of like things in place and that preparedness, like when life does get tough and those moments of suffering do occur. And along that road, right, like really taking time to appreciate, right, the people that are in our lives, the people that we really care about in those little
absolutely.
moments.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
We keep talking about self love, so I think this is the perfect time to kind of move into our self care piece of our episode. We are going to practice some meditation, and this is how we kind of get our listeners to practice some self love and self care. And so, this specific meditation is a self love and self awareness meditation. So, if you all don't mind joining us, or our listeners, in practicing some self care, go ahead and sit in a comfortable position. Go ahead and begin taking a deep breath in and out. Notice your breath without trying to change it. And notice also if you feel tensed or relaxed without trying to change that either. Go ahead and inhale through your nose and then exhale through your mouth. Continue to take deep, full breaths in through your nose and out of your mouth. As you breathe, become aware of the state of your body and the quality of your mind. We are really going to practice some of that self awareness. Where is your body holding tension? Do you feel closed off or shut down emotionally? Where is your mind? Is it wandering or is it at home within the breath? Is your mind at ease or filled with restlessness, negativity, or doubt? Continue to take deep breaths in and out and let your breath become more smooth and effortless. And begin to breathe in and out through your nose. Feel that flow of air moving into your lungs and then back out into the world. With each exhale, imagine you are releasing any negative thoughts that may be lingering in your mind. Continue to focus on your breath. On each inhale, think, I am worthy. And on each exhale, I am enough. Let each inhale draw in some self love, and each exhale release what is no longer serving you. Continue to take a deep breath in and out. Continue to state, I am enough. I am worthy. And notice how you feel as you say these words to yourself. If your mind wanders at any point, that's okay. Simply bring your attention back to the breath. Notice how your thoughts come and go, whether positive or negative thoughts are doing so, and simply allow them to pass on, just like clouds floating in the sky. Continue to take deep breaths in and out. Tell yourself you are worthy of happiness. Imagine now that you could breathe into your heart and visualize love pouring out of your hands into your heart. Allow a sensation of warmth to fill from head to toe. Take a few more deep breaths in and out. Make sure they're mindful breaths, and then softly open your eyes when you are ready. And just take a few seconds to acknowledge the unique experience you had during this meditation.
Every time we finish this, I always want to take a nap. It's
Every time.
so good.
Hmm. And I think that was like a perfect way. I mean, after that talk we just had and really talking about, self work, self love, right? Really being able to kind of be an uplift for ourselves. I think that was such a great meditation to add into the end of this episode. So thank you so much, JC. And so before we go, Chris, I know there's maybe a lot of different ways people can find you online. If, maybe some listeners out there would love to just keep track of you, right? And keep track of your story, see some of the incredible accomplishments that you've really been able to take part in, right? I mean, since your healing process. And so, what are some of your social platforms? I also know that you have kind of like a site, right, where you're kind of fundraising and building some money back up. And so, would you mind sharing that out with our listeners?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's my name, Chris Cocores, at Instagram, or on Instagram, Facebook as well. We're working on a documentary. I'm really stoked on that, just because that's going to be able to reach a broader audience. We just wrapped up filming, went into post production, and they managed to catch just about everything on film. So that's called Momentum. Like I said, we're in post production, so it's going to take some time before that comes out. But keep an eye out for that, and just keep taking care of yourselves. I'm all good. I don't need anything. Just keep honing into your own lives. Working on your own Instagrams. And if you guys want to follow along, then yeah, you can just search me by my name.
Awesome. And I love that that's your sign off right there. It's such wonderful words of positivity and encouragement.
Hey, I appreciate you guys very much for having me. This was fun.
I am so appreciative. I know we're all so appreciative. We were just, really excited. We knew as like emotional as maybe just heavy as this conversation was going to be, that we were just really excited to have you here and just honored, like JC said before, like honored to be in the space with you and give you this platform to tell your story, to connect with even more people, because I know how impactful you are. And again, seeing the little bits and pieces, right? Like seeing your Instagram, seeing you go and visit other people in the hospital since your accident,
Yeah,
like you have such an incredible impact. And so we're just thrilled to be able to kind of continue that impact, right? And give you this platform to do so.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. I'm going to link all of Chris's stuff below. So listeners, you can feel free. You can, go down, check out his Instagram. You can keep tabs on that documentary coming out. I know he's selling really cool stuff. You got walkout t-shirts from your fights and signed gloves, things like that. So I'm going to link all of that below. So yeah, any listeners could just keep in touch, keep track of you. And so thank you so much again, Chris. This was really, really awesome. I have to say too, I'm so used to calling you Coco that calling you Chris this whole time I had to
Weird, huh?
I had to
Yeah.
mentally think about it every time I was saying it. So I'll end with that. Coco, thank you so much for being here. You are truly inspiring. I know that, any listener we had today, no matter what walk of life, no matter what they've been through, have probably just been able to really take in a lot of your advice, your encouragement, and your resilience, right? And so I know that this had probably a really big impact on a lot of people today. So
Perfect. That's the goal.
thanks to all of our listeners out there for just joining along, being a part of this heavy but really incredible story of resilience. And so to all our listeners out there, thank you so much, and we hope you join us for our next conversation.